Welcome back to another episode of Paul's Pod. My guest today is very, very special. He has got one of the most inspirational stories I think you'll ever find. The guy is incredible, incredible fighter as well. Not only just an incredible story, an incredible fighter and a person. It is the one and only Aaron Aby. Yes, brother. How are
Hey mate,
you?
you okay?
I'm
You
good.
alright? Thanks for having me.
Bro, the pleasure is all mine. There's a lot that I want to speak to you about. But I think the best thing we were just touching on football. I think football is probably the best place to start for your story as well. Um, you ended up being almost a professional footballer before getting into MMA. So, growing up, what was it like growing up in Wales?
It was great, I loved my childhood. I loved the group of people that I grew up with, school and everything. Uh, it was great, and football was a big part of me growing up, and having the group of friends and everything that I did. So, Wales is a beautiful place as well with great people, and yeah, I'm fortunate that I had a good upbringing that I enjoyed. Like I always remember, like when you're growing up, and my stepdad used to say, "Oh, school will be the best years of your life," and you'd be like, "No chance," but no, I really did enjoy school. I think I was fortunate in that way.
I mean, Welsh football, and you just touched on about being a Liverpool fan. I know just 2 seconds ago. You mean you're not had the greatest few months. Liverpool aren't doing too great. Wales another good World Cup. but
But I did say about Wrexham, didn't I?
oh, you did, you
Which
did, you
was,
did, you did mention Wrexham. I mean, how great is that to have? Someone like Ryan Reynolds owning such a club like Wrexham. I mean, how good is that for the town?
it's completely transformed, like the atmosphere and the vibe locally. Like I remember Wrexham, they train at my gym, uh, and the time it was going on, there was like rumors and stuff, and I was like laughing them off. But then I got like a bit of inside information, like probably like just hours before it got announced, and I was like, remember being in the gym, like surely not.
It's
Since
crazy. It's crazy, and it's helped. I mean, financially, I can imagine it's helped the club in so many ways.
Yeah, it's just the thing is as well with Wrexham, like the football is a big part of it. To be fair, like they've always had the fans for the lower league. They've always had the support. Like like it's not unusual that they have 10,000 there, even though that they've been in the lower leagues and everything. So they've always had that backing, but not always had the team to go with it or the owners to support it. But since it's happened, like the town's buzzing, the atmosphere's back at the games, and it just seemed to have a knock on effect. Because I think when you are a small town like Wrexham, something that affects everyone will just have like a snowball effect everywhere else. So it's been a mad 18 months or whatever how long they've been in charge, but it's been a positive one for everyone. I think.
I think it's even been a positive one for not only Wrexham but all the other local teams that are, in similar lower league divisions. Because, when you look at a team like Wrexham, because of the eyes that are now on the team because of the owners, you've got the likes of BT Sport who will have the rights to the lower league games, which not only obviously promotes Wrexham, but it does just promote all the lower leagues as well. It will get other fans also supporting their local team type of thing, and I think it's just great for the National League. Really, I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of positives from it.
yeah, definitely. And then like the documentary, which was on Disney that they made and everything, just getting the eyes out there and promoting. I think there are even talks that they're going to increase the amount of teams that can get promoted from the league from one to two automatic, and then obviously one through the playoffs, which also be a positive thing for the other teams as well.
So would you say football was your first love growing up?
Yeah, football was my first love growing up. Yeah,
And I think at what age did you get diagnosed with cystic fibrosis? Because
up,
you
uh,
know
up.
at birth. So I mean, you touched on about how great of a childhood you have, and I think it just goes to show how much of a positive person you are because, I read that your parents basically ripped up the booklet because cystic fibrosis, generally speaking, the health complications are very messy for a lot of people. Um, you know, you were told that your life expectancy wouldn't be more than 16 and you wouldn't be able to, have any physical activity. I mean, I know that you were, at birth, like you said, when you got diagnosed, but did you ever feel like it was ever going to have any impact, or was it just never even putting that into your mind?
The younger I would suppose the more naive I was to cystic fibrosis because I think I was fortunate with my family that they would just treat me like a normal kid, make sure I was out with my mates like everyone else, make sure I was playing sports, that I was no different to them. It was only the older I got, like the more aware I become of complications and health problems with cystic fibrosis, and then experiencing some growing up was was the time it would feel more real. But especially as a younger age, I used to think like everyone had to have like the treatments I was having or the tablets before they ate or going to the hospital for checkups every like 4 to 6 weeks. I
Yeah.
didn't really know any different as a kid. It's just the older I got, the more I started to learn about it and become more aware. And then I ended up having like a few hospital stays and some treatments growing up. But I feel like I always knew I would do something good for people with cystic fibrosis by being like a positive, influential person almost, and like try and break the norms of all normality. And I think that's why like football and sport growing up played such a big part. Like I used to do cross country. I had the 1500-meter record in the school in North Wales and everything because I almost used my physical performance to compare me to everyone else. So if I was doing as well or better than everyone else, I felt I was healthy. So it's almost like I had something to prove to myself and then also the other people by using sport in that way. But like with football growing up, I would almost hide the fact I had CF.
Yeah. I
I
remember
wouldn't
reading
tell the
that.
wouldn't tell the coaches. Would like sneak my tablets in my mouth so nobody would see because I didn't want to like be picked because of it or not picked because of it. So when I made the switch into MMA later down the line, I reversed how I was there, and I was like, right, I'm going to use this now to promote CF in a positive light and get the awareness out there and raise money for it and show people that you can still achieve things no matter what.
Well, I mean, it's a powerful message for sure, mate, because, I think a lot of people, um, with cystic fibrosis specifically as well, when you get told that with a lot of families, a lot of families don't kind of want to take the risk. I mean, was there ever pushback from any doctors when they found out that you were still, pushing your body to the limit?
Uh, there was not so much physically from exercise and stuff. Obviously, the recommendation when I was born was not to exercise, but we just went against the grain and everything. But like the older I get now, like the more exercise is encouraged. Like in CF units in hospital, they have a gym because they know
Oh,
how important training the lungs are and everything. I had like a little head start on that, but the only pushback I would get from fighting was mixed martial arts. Like they didn't want me doing that because obviously the complications that can come with fighting, the damages also like it's not good for someone with cystic fibrosis to have operations or be put under anaesthetic because of the lungs and everything. So the risks that come with that, but there's also benefits that come with fighting, the mental aspect of fighting, the preparation, the game plan, the nutrition. So by eating healthier, also your body's going to be healthier as well. And like I said, for me, it was like it almost made me feel alive and made me feel like I was healthy. The ability I was able to have the ability to compete with people and promote that.
growing up, I mean, did you had you had or spoke to anyone else that had cystic fibrosis and was kind of, going against and pushing their own boundaries and, not letting it define them, or did you not really have? Was it just your parents kind of saying you're not going to have this life, and that was the only thing that was
Yeah,
around you?
no, it was my parents. I think like social media obviously didn't exist to the extent it does now. The older I get, the more powerful social media has become. I've met other people. There's a professional rugby player uh, in South Africa who plays rugby. There's like some PT trainers who have gone on to quite do well. There's a cyclist from Australia who competes in like some really heavy cycling races. So there's not many of us, but there's a few of us, and I do think there'll be more. Like I speak to parents now who kids are boxing at a good level. Some are trying jujitsu. Some are playing football. There's a goalkeeper. So I do think it will only get more and more. And I do think like them seeing people's story gives them a bit of hope because probably those initial stages of reaction are down to the parents. Like I
Yeah.
didn't get to decide anything when I was born, or when I was 3, 4. That was all down to them. So if they can see people who can give them a bit of hope, that can make an impact. Like I always hashtag on my post like CF fighter, cystic fibrosis athlete and stuff, and people have been in touch with me about that. Some have become really, really, really close to me from just tagging that and saying their kid was just born from CF, and they read my story and it changed how they were going to bring up their kid. And that's always been like the aim for me because I remember like my mum and dad, they said they got home and they read the booklet that they were given and they were heartbroken, and my dad just ripped it up and just chucked it in the bin. That was like his way to try and fight it and almost not accepting it, and it's ended up being a positive thing. So if I can do that for one person, that's a win. So for me, like that's what I've tried to do through mixed martial arts.
It's just incredible, really, mate. Health scares are all over, and so many people deal with them all the time, and many people even deal with them, privately. And to have the platform like you do, and to use your platform in the right way like you do is truly like inspiring. Like I said, even if it's just one person is enough to help, but to be able to reach out and speak to many people is just incredible because it really shows people as well that with a strong mindset, life's tough. Life is going to throw you so many fucking hurdles that is going to be up and down. It's never going to be easy, but as long as you have the right mindset and you never give up on yourself, then really, you know, the opportunities are endless. It doesn't have to be like your illness or your health doesn't have to define who you are and what you do. And I think you're a prime example of that. If we can just kind of go back towards when you were playing football. So you played football to a pretty high level. You were with the Welsh under 18s. Am I right? Um,
Yeah, it's Wales at under 15, 16, 17, up to under 18.
and you managed to play alongside Aaron Ramsey. Didn't play with, but also did you train alongside Gareth Bale as well? Some pretty big
Trained,
names.
trained along Gareth Bale, played with like Aaron Ramsey, Joe Allen, Neil Taylor, people who went on to play in the Premier League and everything. They were my group going up, so which ended up being an iconic Welsh group of footballers.
Oh, mate, a completely incredible generation of Welsh footballers for what they did in 2016, especially. I mean, getting to the European Championship semi-final. You were at Shrewsbury Town Academy, is that correct?
Yeah,
And then when it came to the youth contracts being handed out, I know that obviously they favoured people that were around Shrewsbury, and you didn't end up getting a professional contract. How tough was that on you? Because obviously you'd gone through so much already at that point to play football and to be at that level, and then to not get what you wanted.
it was heartbreaking, but it was I was at Shrewsbury since I was 12. Uh, I ended up being the captain through the year groups, top goal scorer in the last 4 or 5 years, uh, playing for the ages above me, not even my age at some years. I was the first one from my group to go and play in the youth team at the time, and obviously when it come to giving out contracts, and they were one of the only clubs which, when you were a youth team, you went and lived there at the time. So you went and stayed in college there, you lived there, and obviously they didn't want to take a risk on looking after someone with cystic fibrosis in the campus. So for me,
Did you
that was something that never I could never have changed. It would have been no different from the age of 12 all the way through to that year. And I met some great people there who I'm still close with to this day. Uh, and unfortunately, in that final year, we had a change of coach like halfway through the season. So I don't know if that impacted anything. Uh, but I remember like when I left the room on the day. We had the final game and we played the youth team, so it was the under 16s, we the youth team, and we beat the youth team 1-0, and I scored. And I knew before the game that I wasn't getting selected, uh, but I still showed up. I got man of the match. I scored because I just again wanted to almost say "f you"
yeah.
and be loyal to my teammates. And I remember when I left that day, the parents and all the players just got up and just started clapping
Wow.
when I left. And that's something that still touches me now. Just seeing the impact they had on them. And I remember at the time, like the text of people saying, they couldn't believe it, and everything. So that was my end of football. Really, and the other thing which I enjoyed about mixed martial arts was that I didn't have to get picked.
It was all on
It
you.
was it was up to me if I won or I lost. That was down to me on the day and performing. So that was something of which helped me go into mixed martial arts a bit more.
Did you feel let down by Shrewsbury?
I did, but I mainly felt less let down by the new coach who
Yeah.
come in and made the decision. Because I'd gone from like the January meeting with the old coaches to your first name on the team sheet. You're the captain. You're the top goal scorer. We can't wait to bring you into the youth team and start working you towards the reserves. And literally to March, being in a completely different situation. Uh, so I didn't feel let down by them as a club or as a group. I just felt let down by one person.
And was it, you see a lot of people that don't end up getting the contract that they want, but then still kind of playing football. Was it hard for you to continue playing football knowing that you didn't get the professional contract? Was it kind of too emotional?
No, not really. I ended up going back to Wrexham at the time, but they'd already given out all their contracts to youth team players. So I ended up on like a part-time one, which was 3 days a week training, two in college, and I ended up with someone who I played for North Wales with at the time, Simon, who's one of my best mates to this day, who's gone on to like coach at a high level in football and is still doing that, and his best man at his wedding and everything. So I met someone through that who's ended up being a lifelong friend. But so I was still playing at Wrexham. Obviously, it was hard. I think I ended up making like maybe like 3 or 4 reserve team appearances, like 20 youth team appearances in one season. Mainly off the bench though, because obviously guys were there 5, 6 days a week,
Yeah.
and I'm there 3. So it was hard to like make a big of an impact as I would have liked to and been able to. But they were also training every day, so probably getting better and improving. And I was there 3 days and having to go and do college work and stuff. But again, I had a great time doing that. I still love football and being around people, and obviously that's when I was like around Neil Taylor and people like that, and just taking on stuff from them and how they trained. And like Darren Ferguson was at the club at the time, who was a great professional, but also like people I'd looked up to, like Neil Roberts, who when I was a kid going to watch Wrexham, he was like my favourite player, and then he ended up being back at the club when I was back there for a year. So I still had a great experience and enjoyment through that year playing for Wrexham as well.
I'm interested to know. So it doesn't sound like you lost the love of football, but the transition to MMA, was it just purely, you just discovered MMA and was just wow, like this shit is fucking unreal.
A bit of both, really. Like I was started training while I was at Wrexham because my uncle Julian, he started taking a class for charity 2 nights a week. Well, it was one night a week at first, and I was going to that with my dad. And like my dad worked, he used to run the door company in Wrexham at the time, so like all the doormen were going, and I was like this 16-year-old kid going training with all the doormen in Wrexham. And I really loved the training. And then one night become 2 nights a week, and then I was like asking my uncle if we could like go down and do some extra stuff on our own. And after Wrexham, I ended up playing in the Welsh Premier League. So I was like playing in the Welsh Prem, training MMA like 4 or 5 nights a week, and only training football once or twice. Because at the time the Welsh Prem was part time. It was 2 nights a week, but if we had a game on a Friday, it'd just be one training session. So I was ended up doing MMA more than I was playing football, and obviously falling in love with it that way. And then I would like start getting some amateur fights, and like I would be like, right, I can't play football now, like 3 weeks before, because I don't want to get injured. And I remember we had a final at the racecourse of the North Wales Cup, and the game was on the on the Wednesday, sorry, and I was fighting on the Saturday, and I was played the game, and I rolled my ankle in the game, and I fought Saturday, and I fought and won on the Saturday, but I had a knackered ankle. And I remember thinking, I can't do this no more, and I had to like start picking which route I wanted to go down. But if I was at football and no MMA training was on, I'd be like training thinking about MMA.
So
So
you in your mind, you'd already kind of made that switch that you were more focused on the
yeah,
MMA.
a little bit. And like obviously, as I was playing in the Welsh Prem, the standard wasn't as good as I was used to, and part of the game was
Yeah.
kicking the ball in the corner and chasing it. And I've been used to like so many different things, and also traveling like 4 hours to, I was playing in a men's league at the
Yeah.
time as a kid, which was okay, which was fun. But my friends were about doing other stuff, and I was just thinking about mixed martial arts and the training I was doing with that. So it was like almost not forced on me, but it was an easy option when it come
Yeah.
down to it. Higher level, I was going in mixed martial arts.
Would you say it
Uh,
really sorry to interrupt you, but would you say it helped you as well? Because I know that earlier you said that, for you it was really, the health challenge was to always, kind of always, prove to yourself that you were healthy and you were good. And was there well, you never really had the worry, I guess, of when football wasn't the thing, MMA was just the next thing. It wasn't even like something you had to think about.
no, no, it wasn't, and I think growing up, like me and my mates would put boxing gloves on and just start punching lumps out of each other and everything. We'd always enjoyed that sort of stuff. Like they say about lads, they like football, fighting, and everything. And like we were always that. And my group of mates were always that type of people anyway. But I remember like the UFC was only like maybe 3 or 4 events a year back then, and like we'd all go to my uncle's and all take like food and watch the fights and everything, and it was just becoming a part of who I was. And and growing up and everything, and it just felt it made me feel alive doing it, and it felt like I was meant to be doing it, and yeah, it just went in hand with who I was really.
Who were you looking up to when you were watching the UFC? Like when you'd come around with your boys, and who was the one of the main people that you used to proper get going
Probably
watching?
someone I really like think of now as like anything I've like built my game on or similar to him as a person. Like, but Chuck Liddell was my favorite growing up, which is like nothing like my fighting style or even like even like the way he would act with like drinking and smoking and everything and having like three girls in his locker room before a fight. And it was nothing like who I am now, but he was my favorite. He was
He's the
my
original
favorite.
superstar.
Yeah, he is the original superstar, and I think when I started watching it, he was on like a run of like beating everyone, and then he lost to Randy Couture, and I remember like everyone saying he was done and that, and I was like, no, he's going to come back, he's going to come back, uh, and he ended up coming back and obviously winning that fight. But then he was probably the original. Then it was like Sean Shirk, who was back in the day, who was an absolute monster. And it just went on from there, like the days of Uriah Faber, and like WEC took a big part of my life because obviously they were all lighter guys and there was no under 70 kilogram fighters at the time. So like the blue, WEC played a big part in me growing up and everything. So no, yeah, I loved it and yeah, it just fell hand in hand.
Was your dad ever big into MMA, or was it just your uncle was like the forefront of the push from MMA from your family side?
Dad actually took me, so he used to go and train with me. He was like, "Right, your uncle's doing a class." I was living with at the time. He was like, "We're going." So he was again involved in it, and he used to come when we used to watch the fights and everything, and he would train as well. So it was something that like we did together. But like my uncle was like the forefront, the coach, the it's like say the Mr. Miyagi, the sensei at the time, because he would go out to America every summer for like 6 to 8 weeks and train with Eric Paulson.
Oh, sick.
Uh, so that's how it like started. He was a CSW affiliated coach, and then he would bring it back home and everything. And then I'd had like a couple of trips out to Eric Paulson's to train and spend like weeks growing up there as I was coming through and everything. So yeah, it was a family thing, and probably one my mum just went, "No, what's he doing?"
Mums are never a fan of fighting.
No,
Mom,
they're not.
the mom is never gonna be. Oh no, like, my mum is just. Yeah, she can't even sit and watch a fight.
So
Um,
not
so
surprised.
so obviously you by this point you started taking a few amateur fights, and when you're taking these fights, are you taking them more just kind of in the moment because you're enjoying it, or were you always thinking at the back of your head that this was something that you wanted to do professionally?
I wouldn't say professionally back then because it was hardly existed. Like I was fighting at 70 kilogram and like weighing like 62. And like my first four fights were two fights in one day, no headshots, like 4 ounce gloves, shin guards against like men in a cage where in a ring where you just turned up on the day, weighed in, and got drawn against two random people and like under 70 that everyone turned up at. It was only like I think I was around as the sport was starting to grow, and then like eventually I had to go and like find a gym that was training full time, and then I was like, oh, there's professionals here, and then I was like, right, I need to follow in their footsteps, and like I had like people like obviously Jason Tam was running the MMA academy, and he had Mike Wooten and Pietro Menga there, who were like Mike was 61, Pietro was 57, and they were like pro fighters who went on to do great things, and like they were the people that I was like looking up to and training with, and then seeing what they were doing, and I was like, well, I can do that. And again, it just went from there. When I started fighting, it was never probably something that I thought oh, I can do this full time, because I didn't even think you could at the time, especially
Yeah.
in the UK. Like, obviously the UFC was mainly Americans and Brazilians and stuff. So I think the sport grew as I was coming into it.
What do you think has been the biggest difference in the fighters from when you were, rocking up, waiting in the day, not knowing who you're fighting, compared to guys that are taking it as a professional career or trying to make it professionally?
Approach, approach. I think that it's a professional sport now. The coaches are a lot more professional. The gyms are run more professional. The amateurs are training twice a day, 6 days a week, 5 days a week.
Just smarter.
Smarter, but also spending more time in it. Like like I said, when I started training, it was once a week, and then it was twice a week, and a lot of times you just turn up and have a punch up. Like, now the coaches are becoming more educated. There's sports scientists coming with your team, strength and conditioning coaches. You got your striking, your grappling coach, your MMA coach. There's full time gyms. I think the standards only going to keep growing and getting better. You know, kids are training from like 4 or 5 years age back now.
Oh, British MMA has never been as good as
Yeah.
it is right now. It's phenomenal.
When I started, it was like 18, 19 people were starting. Like, I was probably one of the youngest to start back then. But, I've trained with 13-year-old kids this week who are giving me problems. So, the sport's growing, and I think that's just down to approach.
And
There's
when,
a lot of fighters now who are becoming coaches and learn from
yeah,
everything. So that's only going to keep growing as well.
had you been having like obviously your difficulties with your cystic fibrosis when you were competing fighting, like what was the biggest difference that you thought was more challenging with what you had from football and MMA?
The biggest difference between football and MMA, challenging wise, I would say that the weight was hard. Like, to keep the weight maintained, or to the fluctuations between the weight, because with CF, like, you're trying to eat a lot to maintain your weight, and then obviously you'd want to eat healthy, so you'd
Yeah.
end up losing a bit of weight. But for me, it was just like, sometimes it was hard to train as often as everyone else without getting sick.
Mm.
Like, if I push myself like to the extremity, sometimes that everyone else was, I feel like I would maybe get like a cold or a cough or everything and need a couple of days off. So I had to be smarter back then. But medication's obviously improving now in cystic fibrosis, and I feel like that's played a bit of a part in my health. So that's helped as well. But I would say that was like the main thing growing back then, because, like, obviously if someone had a cold for them was completely worse for me. So, like, we're all training together, sweating in each other's mouths and kissing each other as we're training. So I got bound to get something. Uh, so I would say that, I ended up fighting one fight with 40% lung function.
Jesus Christ.
I won a decision, and I was like sick after the fight, and I was like, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And the thing, I kept taking the guy down, and he kept getting back up. So I was like, it was tiring fight for me. I won comfortably, but I remember having forty
It was a
percent lung.
challenge.
It was a challenge. So there was stuff like that, that I had to deal with. Which in football I wasn't like. You would train like as a kid 3 nights a week, play on a Saturday, maybe train in school and that. Whereas MMA, like when I started training at the MMA academy, and it was twice a day and everything. And again, we weren't as smart then as we were now. We would do like 15 3-minute rounds in the morning, go back in and rest 5 5s at night. So that was the biggest difference.
So things are going as well as they can be. Obviously, you're trudging along, pushing yourself, and within about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, around 3 or 4 years into your MMA career, you had a turn of some really bad news. How did that come about, and how soon was it all?
That was into my pro career, yeah. It was probably around 6 months' time uh, that it was like coming about. I was scheduled to fight Danny Missing at the time, but I'd already fought before that and had a few worrying things, but nothing certain or anything
Yeah.
that I thought about. But I remember Carl Prince took me boxing sparring, and I drove home and I had to pull over and I rang him up and I was like, "Did I take a low blow today?" He was
What
like,
was that?
"No."
Sorry.
Did I take a low blow today? And he was like, "No, not don't think so, unless I didn't see it." And I was like, "I've got like pains in my stomach and my testicles. Uh, I've like, had to pull over. I couldn't drive." And he was like, "No." He's like, "Maybe go and get yourself checked out." So I remember I was coaching. So I went home and I coached for 2 hours, but I was like sweating at the time. I was coaching in pain and like not really like focusing on what was happening. So straight after that, I took myself to A&E and they said, "Oh, you just got a water infection. Here's some antibiotics. Get yourself off." Uh, so I took the antibiotics and I didn't take them at the time because I was one of those like don't want antibiotics if I don't need them. I was like, they haven't even done blood or anything. How do they know I've got a water infection? I'll see how I get on. The pain ended up going, but it would come back, go and come back. But I managed to get the fight out the way and done with, which was a big fight at the time. It was a rematch of one that I'd lost. It was on ACB, which was a big show. Uh, there was a lot of like bad talk before it from him, and like he was saying about I shouldn't be fighting with cystic fibrosis and he's going to retire me and stuff. So part of me thought it was just the stress and the pressure of the fight was the reason that I
Was
was having
causing. Yeah.
causing pains because the pains were going into my back as well.
And you won the fight.
Yeah, I won the fight, and then went and got checked out after again, and they did bloods this time. I was like, last time we didn't do bloods, so made sure they did bloods and everything. Went, went to the doctors, and it just snowballed from there with stage 3 testicular cancer that had spread into my stomach and the lymph nodes eventually. And then that was the start of that journey, really.
That is. I mean, that must have fucking taken so much out of you, bro. Stage 3 cancer as well. Serious, and I think it developed into a tumor into your stomach as well, didn't it? Like you said, in
Yeah,
your back as
so
well.
that went into the stomach, and that journey was one of up and downs. Like being told, like first of all, like had an operation, removed the testicle, getting told the cancer had gone, the cancer then coming back, uh, chemotherapy. I had 5 days of 20 hours on, 4 hours off for 5 days, 2 weeks off, and then repeat 5 times. And then I was waiting for an operation on my stomach, and there was only one surgeon in the UK that could do the operation because of where it was in the stomach. It was close to the valve that takes blood to your heart. So if they were to touch that, it was game over. But while I was waiting for the surgeon to be free, the cancer come back. So then I was back in for chemotherapy again, 20 hours on, 4 hours off.
How
Uh,
heavy is the chemo on you, like mentally? Now, obviously, physically, it takes everything out of you, but mentally, what was that like to go through so much?
yeah, it was hard, like you said earlier, life's tough. It ain't easy, and I'm not gonna like sit here now and tell you it was easy. And I always had the strength to get through it. Uh, I was fortunate; I had great people around me who would support me and stuff, and people who would come to the hospital with me, or even people at home who would look after me. I was fortunate with that, and like I used to like say, right, I'm going to bite down on my gum shield and just push through it, and like every day grind it out. And I remember in between the 2 weeks off, my aim was to get back in the gym. So I made sure I trained twice in those 2 weeks, just as like set myself little goals. But I remember, like after my first chemo, the first 5 days, uh, we come home on the Saturday, and I think England were playing in the World Cup, and I was living at my mum's at the time, and me and Haley were buying a house, and I was like, right, we'll walk there.
Hmm.
So it was probably only about a mile and a half, but like that would be nothing. But I remember the day after, like it was the day after my first lot of chemo, and we walked there. We got there, and I remember I just slept for the rest of the day. I was like, just that was it, me done. Slept for the rest of the day, and I was like, oh, this is gonna get some take some getting used to, like feeling like this when I'm not used to it. But yeah, chemo's tough, and I think one of the things it was tough for me to accept having chemotherapy. Obviously, there's a lot of negative research out there and stuff on it. And I remember before I had cancer, my nana had cancer, and the chemo was killing her. And eventually ended up killing her. And I was reading a book at the time called How Not to Die, and that had all about all the negatives in it, about chemotherapy and stuff, and watching me nana die with chemotherapy. And I would go in to have the chemo, and they get the waiver, the this form you had to sign, and it would say all about all the negative effects of chemotherapy and like what it does to your lungs and everything. And I'd be like, I'm not doing that. And I'd
I can
like,
imagine psychologically as well, like with the cystic fibrosis and your
yeah.
nan dying of the chemo, that must have been such a mind fuck.
They always used to say to me as well, like, chemo's last resort because of your CF. They always used to say that to me, and when I would like look at the negatives of it on the form, it can do this, it can do this, it can do this. I would leave and not sign it, and then I'd go back again with my dad and my uncle, and I'd leave again. I couldn't like bring myself at the start to have it because of all the negatives it was going to do to my body. And I remember then my nurse, my cystic fibrosis nurse, come to see me, and she said, "You know, Aaron, you're going to be dead in probably 6 months if you don't try the chemo." She said, "And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We'll support you with end of life care. But if you want to do it, we'll support you with it, and we'll fight it as hard as possible." And I remember like Haley, my mum, my stepdad at the time, they were like, "Please try, please give it a go." So I was like, "Right, I'll be in the hospital tomorrow." And once I committed to it, that's it. I was all in and going to give it everything I got. And actually, after the last stage of chemotherapy I had, they like said to me, "Your lungs wouldn't have taken one more lot of chemotherapy."
Fucking hell.
They were like, they wouldn't have taken one more. You would have been gone. Uh, so something was on my side then, but like that was like a year, 12 months, maybe a bit longer of everything. Like I tell this story now. I remember I got the my bloods went all back normal. I was waiting for the surgeon to ring me to give me a date, and I went again, and I rung up for my blood test results, and they told me my cancer had come back. Uh, this had been the third time because it had already come back before, and I remember it was me and my mum at home, and we just sat down on the floor and we were just crying, and we knew I couldn't have any more chemo, so we were like, we're done. And then like 2 hours later, they rang me, "Sorry, we've give you the wrong results."
Oh my god.
We were like, wow. We were like relieved, pissed off, fucking gutted. They give me my old results, but not the new ones from the bloods. And like, didn't know whether to laugh, cry, fucking
Jesus Christ.
one of them. one of them things which was just absolute madness. But that journey it was tough, and I think what previously in life with CF, what I'd gone through with fighting, with football, with growing up, got me through that journey and out the other end. And I like to think I've learned things from that now. But for me, I wasn't. Again, I had the operation, the emergency op, which I didn't know if I was going to come out the end of either dead or with cancer, being told it's spread everywhere or cured. For me, I said I'm not cured until I've fought again. So that night I made my comeback fight. That was me being cured of cancer. And I think, like, to this day, the walk out for that fight was one of the most proudest moments I've had in my life. Not just for me though, but for everyone around me. I remember like seeing people in the crowd who mopped up me sick, who'd been in the hospital with me, who know, carried me to the car if I needed to. Like we all did that together, and I think like it was on UKFC at the time, so I could see everyone in the crowd, and they all had cage side seats. And for me, making that fight was being cured and in the end of cancer because I was back competing. And like I said, growing up as a kid, I was only doing okay if I was competing physically with everyone else.
Mate, that is the courage that it takes. I know obviously a lot of it will come from the people around you and the support bubble, but I mean that is just ridiculous to go through what you've gone through, to still be here, to still be fighting at such a good level, and it's just so inspiring, mate. And I know that, you know, your story can help so many people, and it's incredible. And almost lost for words in me. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like to have the cancer come back again and to like to be. I mean, I'm still trying to process that they actually told you that the wrong bloods, and you had basically, I'm guessing, for a couple of hours, had almost accepted death.
Yeah, and I think as well for me, the fact that it was out of my control was hard. But I would also, like I said, made sure I could control what I could. So my aim was to be in the gym in between the chemotherapies. I'd just go on the rower. I'd be like, right, what's the best way to get fit and keep my lungs healthy? I'm just going to row. I'd even get in the odd MMA session if I could, and I wasn't like in too much pain. I was like, I can only control these things. That's what I'm going to do. And I remember when I got my uh, operation date for the major surgery, I put a training plan together because my lung function at the time, because I said was like 30% because of all the chemo and stuff, and I managed to get it up to like 70% before I went in for the operation. I was like, if I can control these things, I'm going to control them. If I can get my lungs, rather than just wait for the operation date. So I went and did things like that. And I remember I went to meet the surgeon, and he was like, "There's tomorrow. There's risk of crossing the road 20 mph with a lollipop lady. There's risk of crossing the road at 30 mph on a normal road." He said, "Tomorrow, it was me and my uncle at the time, you're crossing the motorway blindfolded." He was like, they planned for a 16-hour operation. They had like lung specialist team and their spine specialist because they weren't sure if the cancer had gone to my spine. So they planned for a 16-hour operation. And he said, we might open you up tomorrow and just close you and be like, it's done.
Fucking
Uh,
hell.
so like everyone would, not everyone, but like my dad and that, hey, they come, my uncle had come, spent the night with me, my cousin, and I was in there for 4 hours. So obviously they're waiting for the news, and when the surgeon's speaking to them after 4 hours, they're like, "Oh, why so quick?" And like, I was still knocked out at the time, and he come and he said, everything that could have gone right went right. That's all you need to know. So that was it for the operation. Like, the cancer, they've removed everything. And then, like, 2 days later, my lungs ended up collapsing. And we were battling for our lives again, but we ended up getting transferred to the cystic fibrosis team, because I was in Birmingham at the time, and they were like the lung specialists. And 2 weeks later, I was on the running machine in the hospital gym, and I was like, "You need to send me home, guys." And they were like, "Can't argue with you. You shouldn't be going home for like another 4 weeks, but you're on the running machine, like smashing everything. Can't argue with you." I was like, "See you later." And I think I was home like 2 weeks later, and getting back to work. And I was having physio come to my house at the time. Vicky, she was coming to my house, and we put a plan in place. And she was like, "Right, you can't do this sort of training until you've done this. You can't do this until you've done this." And 9 months later, I was back fighting, which in hindsight was too soon. Like, my weight was still like, I was fighting at 57, weighing like 54 kilogram at the time. So it was too soon in hindsight. But like I said, that I hadn't cured myself until I'd fought. I
That
still
was your that
had,
was the biggest battle.
I still had cancer until I'd back competing.
How crazy is it to, as you're telling me this story and as you're going through it all, like, what's it like
I
when you
forget
look
about.
back on it all?
I forget sometimes. Like, just forget about it. But like, obviously, it comes up in conversation. Like, I've been talking about it today, or like bringing it up now with you. I just like think how mad it was at the time. And I don't want to like look back on it all the time, and like, but then sometimes I use it for a bit of strength, and like appreciate where I am now. Or if I'm having like a tough day, I like look back on those moments and think nothing was like as bad as that, and to think where I am now. Like, if when I lost my last fight, and I look back and think about what I've achieved, I'm still proud of it. And again, still, if it can help people, that's still a win. And like, the more my story gets out there, and the more people that it can help, the better. And you know, that's what it is. I'm trying to appreciate what I've got now. And like I said, I know life's going to be tough. There's going to be more tough moments that come up in there for me, and it's never going to be smooth sailing. But it's having the strength to get through it, or try and get through it, but also making sure I'm following a passion that I love, and a lifestyle that I love waking up to every day. So all the tough things that come with every life, at least they're related to something that I love.
And all right, that's powerful, bro. That is truly, truly powerful. I mean, you are if the epitome of a fighter. I mean, never giving up, um, pushing through the hard, dark moments. Um, I mean, you just must be so proud, and your family just must be so proud. And I think you deserve nothing but the best going forward. I mean, what are your plans going forward? I know that we were saying obviously you're hoping to get a fight soon. At the stage that you're at with your professional career, what is there left for you to achieve that you'd like to do? Like, what are some things that you want to make sure you check off?
I'm still aiming for the UFC. I'm still aiming for the UFC. I think that's got to be my goal. Uh, my goal personally, UFC, some fights abroad, uh, some titles, but also to keep spreading story and influencing people inside and outside of the sport. Uh, but yeah, like for me personally, I'm still aiming for that UFC, and trying to reach the top level, and get my story out there to as many eyes as possible. I'm gutted that like the PFL and Bellator don't have a flyweight division,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, me moving up isn't an option at the moment with with my weight and stuff. But yeah, and I think I'll be around in this sport for a long time. Obviously, I'm working for UKSC as a matchmaker. I'm coaching a lot of people and working with a lot of people who are going to go on to do great things as well. And I think that's where I'll end up. And I think I'll be a better coach eventually than I was fighter, because of like my experiences, and also because I was such an undersized fighter fighting at flyweight. Never mind some of the fights that I fought at, and obviously a degree in sport coaching as well when I was in uni and stuff. So I think that's where I'll end up now. But for the moment, I'm making that. I'm hopefully gonna have a big year and push towards that goal of the UFC, and reevaluate in 3 fights time and see if I'm knocking on that door again or not, and I'll go from there. But for me, this journey, the positives and the negatives have only helped me in life, and I'm thankful and grateful for that, and the people I've met, and like I said earlier, life's tough for everyone, but at least it's tough for me and something that I'm following and pursuing and something that I love.
Well, Aaron, it's been more than a pleasure to speak to you today, mate. This conversation will actually have a lasting effect on me as well. Your positivity and your attitude towards things really rubs off on people, I can imagine, as it's rubbed off on me. And you know, aside from your amazing story, like I said, you're an incredible fighter to be in the position that you're in. Hopefully, you can have the year that you wish and deserve. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
I'll make sure I put all of Aaron's social media handles in the description below. Please feel free to follow him, support him. I'll put, even if you've got like a link to donate anything for like cystic fibrosis or anything, just let me know and I'll whack it in the description for that as well. And yeah, keep supporting Aaron. He's a fucking great guy. And yeah, have you got any other final remarks or?
No, just thanks for having me, and I appreciate you spending the time to talk to me, mate. And I wish you all the best in the future, and I hope the podcast as well.
Appreciate it, brother.